Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another session of Revit Radio. Melissa will not be with us today. She is currently on an airplane coming back from Australia. She thought she was going to be here, but she showed up at the airport yesterday and they're like, no, your flight got moved by 24 hours. So she got put up in a hotel and she's missing it today because of she's stuck in a flight. So I've had some delays, but I could say that's probably the worst one I've ever heard. So with that said, I'm Brian. This is Desiree. To the left, top, bottom, right, depending on how your screen's organized. For those of you guys new, I do see a few new names on here to the show. This is essentially talk radio. Questions you ask, we answer. The way you ask those questions, you don't have to call in and deal with an annoying hold person. You just got to put them in the Q&A pod. So feel free to chat us up on the chat pod. We see people already doing that, which is great. We started early and a whole bunch of you are listening to Desiree and I troubleshoot a file. So yeah, it's pretty authentic here. We get into this and we all have those struggles. So please put those in the Q&A pod. Otherwise, I'm gonna start off with a couple things. And this is one that I noticed, and this is just kind of it's not anything in particular. What I noticed when I was working on my template recently, and I don't know what version they updated this, but if you use a schedule key, the properties now shows you that this value, this parameter is set by a key schedule. Stupid and simple, but I was in this template the other day working and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is pretty cool. So now you can't click it. I'm like, oh, can I hit the equal and like see which schedule key or anything? Doesn't do anything, but at least it now lets us know that we actually have these things. And the reason they're grayed out is because of this. I always get questions from people who, when I use schedule keys or key schedules, why is that grayed out? Why can't they change the value? I just want to go in and change the value. So the nice part is you can't, and it tells you why. So that was one stupid, simple little thing that I came up with. And there's this other tool, and I showed this to Desiree, and it's hilarious because
Oh, you can't show this yet.
I remember somebody showing me this years ago, and I was like, man, I need to do some
Brendan, close
research.
your ears.
Then I need to do some research on this and really try to figure this out. For everybody's been asking, hey, it'd be great if we could do tables, right? Just dumb tables in Revit. Well, I found out that if you start a text box, I'm going to zoom into my text box here, and on your keypad, you can't use the keyboard. You have to use your keypad. I got to get mine turned on. If you start with a plus and then put minuses, oops, nope, let me try that again. If you start with a plus and then put minuses in, and then another plus and then more minuses, and then another plus and more minuses, and then you hit enter, does it all have to be on a single line? I'm gonna broke it. I will try this yet again.
Oh, it hurts me.
Third time's a charm, right? Um, try this one more time. I just make sure I won't go out of it. Plus, I'll do like 2 columns. So what's happening here is the plus represents column divisions, and the minuses are how wide is that column going to be per a very thing. And I've tried this. I played with this a little bit a few years back. I'm like, okay, it's a little bit finicky. Played with it a little bit again. I'm not sure if we can use this, but basically I've now created a table. And by hitting the tab key, I can just go in and start doing it. When I get to the end, if I hit the tab key again, I can type in anything that I wanted to do. And I really have this kind of table in here. You do have to activate the text, click on the line to drag it, and you'll see it's kind of like some weird scalable line as you do this. So as I'm in here clicking, I'm barely moving my line and it's going across the screen. It's now outside of the width of my text box. So I have to, stretch my text box wider to see the whole thing. So not 100% sure if this is going to work. Yeah, this is how, yeah, isn't that how the Excel import dumb tables does it in the table headers? No, that's a little bit different. I'll talk about that. So it's kind of here. I forgot about this. There's actually on the Revit forums a forum called Things You Forgot. This was posted up there. I'm like, oh my God, I forgot about this. And I actually tried it the other day and I'm like, it's not working. And then I remembered, no, that's right. You have to do it on your keypad. You cannot use the keyboard numbers. So it has to be numbers on your keypad. If you have a laptop, you usually have a function keypad. You would have to use the function keypad to get that to happen. We played with this. We were trying to figure out, and we haven't played too much with this, but trying to figure out like, okay, I can see lines. Will those lines print? We did a control P. Those lines didn't print. I haven't actually went in and totally researched into this because I wanted to try going down to lines and saying like, ooh, is it going to be using like one of the out of the box line, like called lines? So if I just go make this line weight super fat, is that going to change it? I don't think it'll print. I have no idea. So again, one of those
Crap.
things. What was that?
Just got hit by a golf ball, scared the crap out of me.
Oh, your window's still there?
My window's still there.
So I don't know, haven't totally got into here, haven't figured out what we're going to end up doing inside of this, to get this to work, or even if it's a viable option. But when people tell you, no, you can't do tables in Revit, you can be like, well, kind of. And again, it's definitely kind of, because if you're like, oh, I need to add a new row, I don't think there is. I don't think I can go minus, 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 plus. Oops, that's not on the keypad. See, it's definitely not going to work because I'm not using like the keyboard. So if I
I
came
want
up here as my
justifications too. Like there's so
no, see, it instantly went back into the dialogue too. So even though I'm clicked over here and start typing,
yeah.
so like I said, kind of can kind of do this. I have no idea. So, but at any rate, does the alt pet work to pull the key code? The alts, I don't know if the alt, yeah. So the question came up from Michael is, you go to character map, you can start using some of these alt pound symbols and these other symbols. I literally don't know. I saw this again, got posted I think yesterday or the day before. I showed Desiree and it's like, cool, we really need to dig into this to see if this is something that's viable. Because I'm recreating a client's template right now where they've got all these tables, but again, can't do anything inside of there. It's not like you would even have a tab, because right, if you hit tab, you're going to the next row. So you'd be like doing if you wanted an indented spacing or trying to do different columns and width. So not sure if this is really even viable. It's just, it was something in there that I thought I'd say, hey, look at this. And then, so looks like we only have a couple questions. So I'm going to do one last thing I did want to talk about. One other thing that I did want to talk about, this came up with a client last week, and I always like to talk about these things, is for those who've ever been following me, know I like to load as few families into a project as I can. This was a family that I had. I had to go create this one for my client. But one of the things inside of there that they were looking at is like, I've got this haunched wide flange family. All right. But the beauty part of this is I don't see why I need to load a haunched and a non-haunched version. Why can't I just have one family loaded in my project if I have a project that's going to be using all of these? And so for me, it's a very simple thing that I did this with a client and they loved this idea that, hey, we can just uncheck haunched and we hit apply, it's going to pick up on what it needs to be. So when I change it from a 12 by 26 to whatever I've loaded into that project, I can have all of them as a non-haunched version. And then when somebody does need a haunched version, right, I could just duplicate the one that's there, check haunched, and then I just simply have a value for, hey, what is that going to be in the middle, right? If I say 18 and I say apply, then now I've got a different haunched version. So just kind of one of those things for me that I always see people loading like several different families into a project. And if you've seen my session on streamlining Revit content, this is one of those things that I always talk about is if you can load fewer families into your project, Revit will be faster because, hey, even though there might be a formula that's doing this, it's only thinking about that formula when you go through and tag it. So therefore, having fewer families loaded, your project's going to be better. And it doesn't sound like that crazy of an idea. The other ones where I really get into are like my section heads. I don't have the five section head families in my library. When I go to my library and start looking at this stuff, I have a single section head family. It looks crazy, and this is probably worse than anybody is ever going to need. Again, I give all my stuff to everybody, but I've got one single section head family that has a whole bunch of stuff on top of it, and I'm just controlling most of this with visibility, right? So I come over here, I've got all these different, hey, I've got one that's filled, I've got one with no head, I've got one that's just an open head, right? And all this is the same as the out of the box content. It's just all put on top of each other, just using visibility parameters to control all this. Doesn't sound like it's that big of a deal, but if you start thinking about, oh, I only have one section head and one section tail and one level head, and I start just doing all of this, I can easily eliminate a couple hundred families from my project very, very easily. The other thing that I always talk about, go back to this one too, that I do in my families is I get rid of all of the symbols, right? So when you go into a normal family, you look at it, you're going to have a level head, you're going to have a section head, all of those things inside of there. So for me and all of my families, I went into the additional settings, I went into annotations, I went into sections, and I've said, hey, don't give me a section head or tail. Let me go to the detail, not use a section head or tail. Let me go into an elevation. Let me grab that level and let me select that level and let's not use a head on that level. It sounds crazy, but by doing this, I've dropped each one of my families by like 80 or 90 kilobytes. And if you think about how many families you're loading, you load 200 families in a project, you just dropped, 900 kilobytes or 90 kilobytes 200 times. Again, all of those little things start to add up. So kind of one of those things for me when I just start talking about is, think about how can I do simple things to start streamlining some of that family content. I don't know if you're going to want to do the whole, hey, I've got a wide flange that could be hunched or not, or you could even take it to the extreme and say sloping, so one side it's sloping, etc. Don't know if you would do that, but it is kind of nice to come in and say, oh, I've only got a couple of these loaded as opposed to 15 of them. It's also why in this crazy project here, I have one rebar side family because I can add elbows, hooks, bends, everything. It's a crazy family. I think most people hate it. I've given it to saying it's too complicated, but it does keep me from having to load 15 families. And in the current version, I laughed because I have one client who's like, yeah, I want that because I've got to update to metric. And I have like 30 metric families that I've got to go update. This would update just, I could do just one of them and it would update all of it. So again, not only for the streamlining of content, when you have to make changes, it becomes much easier to make change to one family, not 30. So cool. That's all I had.
Uh, all right. So Rick is stroking your ego about how great you were on BIM After Dark. I think that's unnecessary, Rick. He doesn't need any more props. But do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I did do detailing of them after dark. If you guys didn't see it, Jeffrey does really good at keeping him up on his YouTube channel and everything. Personally, I thought it went a little bit fast, but I also know that I have all of those sessions recorded in other places. But I did talk about, my intelligent way of detailing, which I think most people here know about. And I also went through and talked about the nested detailing, which I laughed because Aubin gave me a call the next day going, dude, I've never seen your nested detailing. I'm like, how have you never seen this? And then I realized it's because him and I always speak at the same time at conferences, so we don't ever go to each other's sessions. So, but yeah, so he said he'd never seen that one either. So hopefully, people took out of it. And if you're really curious, like I said, I was just gonna say Jason because I'm reading comments as well as Jason screaming at me over here in the chat. Yeah, Jeffrey Pinero, the Revit kid, he does a good job of keeping all that stuff updated with links and everything. So,
Oh my God! What is with the golfers?
okay, that was a loud one. I heard that one up here.
That's two and like two people.
In case you guys haven't realized, we live off of a golf course.
It really, this must be like, it's two in a row now that hit the same damn window. Sorry. It's a little bit freaky. That one actually saw it. Window's still there.
Window's still there.
The last guy was really funny. I think he knew he hit the house. So he went up to the middle of the fairway and took a drop in the middle of the fairway. I'm like, you're a cheater. Anyway, so there's a couple follow up on detail stuff.
We also got one from Michael at the bottom. Oh, again, just another one.
Yeah, I heard that one too. Is this like the tournament of the shitty golfers? Like,
Oh,
I
no.
don't think we've been hit this much in a month.
I didn't realize my camera wasn't on.
Oh, okay. Alrighty. Yeah, I saw it in Michael's, the complicated families. Then there's also the question about linked details in I like the idea of keeping linked details in a linked file or details in a linked file, but how do you handle that if you work in BIM 360 in a client's project?
So the big thing about linking details, and it's one that gets everybody, is I always take a copy of that standard detail file that has all the details, and I copy that to my project folder. If that's on the server or if that's in the cloud, doesn't matter. I take a copy of that and move it to the project folder. So that way I'm not linking all of them to my standards. The standards might change. I might need to tweak one or two for a given project. So no matter what's happening, is that detail file does get copied to the project. Now, if it's going to be on BIM 360 ACC, it obviously has to be a collaborated file. So I just, enable work sharing, I collaborate it in the cloud, and now we can go through and do the normal linking we would do with that. So yeah, we can take that file, copy to project, regardless of BIM 360 BIM 360 ACC, then we can start going through and getting into that stuff. So it doesn't really matter where you're putting it, it's still going to be the same process of file linking, etc.
Okay, you want to grab Michael's?
Yeah, and Michael's comment was kind of getting into families, and it always makes me laugh because there is a fine line between overcomplicating a family and making a family user friendly. This one is probably borderline overcomplicated. Once users understand it, they get it and they love it, but getting them to understand it sometimes can be a hurdle. The first thing I always say is don't ever go into a family and start showing somebody the family or all of the behind the scenes parameters, because this will just instantly turn somebody off. Right. So we look at this family. Yes, this is one of the overly complicated families. I mean, there's only like 6 values that don't have a formula. But the nice part about that is when you start looking at this in a project environment, it's not as complicated as you would think. So when I go to create a similar version of this, I can say, what is the angle at the start? What is the angle at the end? If I wanted it just to be straight, cool, I can say it's 0. It's going to have inside of here what's the cover distance on the start and what's the cover distance at the end. If I wanted to play with that at the beginning, I can. But once you start explaining to somebody, hey, I could just come over here, sure, I'll use the whole detail guide box, and I can put this inside of here. You'll see that I put it in there and it is going to a single side. So I've got a side 1 insertion, so I can switch it from whichever side I drew that to or to the center. Right, so we can change that up, and then you'll see, oh, I've got cover edge distance. I know that should have been 3 inches clear, right? And then at the start, I wanted this to be 1.5 inches, probably would be 3 inches as well, but I just want to change it up, and I want that same value down here. Oops, I missed it. All right, so once a user understands that's really what it takes to start coming in here and playing with this, yeah, it's a complicated family, but even though it's overly complicated behind the scenes, there's only like 10 parameters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 parameters, 12 parameters that people have to look at. Right. So there is that fine line. And trust me, I am always skirting that fine line between overly complicated and not. I mean, I remember when I first was learning Revit, this was back in 2004 or 5. I had a client that went and downloaded this all-in-one door family. And it was hilarious because they had to hire me to change the style widths of the doors because they could not figure it out. Like, it's cool. We bought this one door, it does everything. And it was just nested families into nested families into nested families. But they literally could not figure out how to change the style width. So had me come down and do it. And every time that simple things like that, they were like paying me to go edit their fam. Like, well, was it really worth the $10,000 you paid for this or whatever it was? Is it really worth the money you paid for this if it's this overly complicated? So yeah, there is a fine line there to be able to get those things to start happening. And it's a tough one to ride. Sometimes I just do it because, some user gets used to it, like, oh, but what if we had a different side insertion point? That was not originally in the family. It was always centered. Like, yeah, when you say 3 inches clear, I need to make that go to the side, not to the middle. Otherwise, I got out of the house. Like, that's a very good point. So I started going through, adding all of these values inside of here and starting to play with it. You'll see that I could add a 90-degree hook. I also have an alternating checkbox to turn that on or off, right? These are all tools that most of them have come from client requests. This one here, I can start pulling the grip down and change the length of that leg. But if I go too short, that's code length. Doesn't let me go shorter than code unless I check, hey, I want to override that. Now I can do whatever I want with that until I check and say, no, go back to the standard code length. Oh, look at that, which I happen to be there.
That one's I'm using this family right now. I've changed it to be white, and I think you should add a feature so you can turn it on and off the start and end lines like you have in your 2D families. But I'm finding that the extension lengths get angry. I keep getting the no smoking signal on this particular one. Yeah.
When you get too long or too short?
The one I was messing with earlier was too long, so I don't know if maybe it was like trying to adjust the cover versus the length. So maybe that's, I don't know, totally random. Just made me think of it while you were showing it. It definitely needs to be white, not black, though.
Well, mine's not black. Mine changes color based upon the size of bar, so that way I can change the bar size and the color changes.
Okay.
Of course, that's all done with a filter. The family itself is black, but hey, look, I can change them based on the bar size. So I don't know. Like I said, there is definitely a fine line there, Michael, and it's just a lot of it is I just create it and then I hand it out to somebody. And then if I start realizing that nobody's using it, cool, I went over the top on that. And like I said, very fine line to start doing that on certain things. But oftentimes I have clients like, no, that's just too complicated. Dumb it down. And then I do like, okay, we want to make this change. How long will that take? I'm like, 4 hours. Why? Well, because you took the one family and divided it into 12. So I've got to make that change in 12 different families. I've had clients
Oh,
do this with my casework library. It's like, oh, well, your casework will do anything, but I literally want one that has this, and I literally want one that has this, and literally those are just toggles in the checkbox. But I have to go in and save that family, permanently toggle that toggle, with a formula saying 1 = 0 or something like that, or 1 = 1, just so they can have that variation of it and literally save as. But then when they come back and like, oh, cool, now can we change this to that? Yes, but I've got to literally edit the 12 families you made me do a save as. This
Christopher adds, are there any issues with file size or slowing down the families or project with so many parameters and formulas and constraints and things?
The only time Revit thinks about these is when you're editing them. So if I have a family with all these crazy, formulas in there, which the formulas actually aren't even that crazy. The bend ones are a little bit weird because I'm literally getting into bends based the bend radius or diameter, whatever, based off of the size. So if the bend angle is 0, then this and blah 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 blah. So I do have to come in here and start doing this. But literally, these are just conditional statements saying if it's this, then do that. If it's this, do that. This, it's just 15 nested conditional sizes. Same thing for the diameter. If the size is less than 9, it's size divided by 8. If it's 9, then it's this. If it's 10, then it's this. If it's 11, it's this. Otherwise, just make it 3/8. All right. So a lot of these are very simple formulas. They're not getting that crazy. Yes, there might be 7 conditional deep, but they're not that crazy of formulas. So it is something that you can get into. It is something that can happen. Oh, sweet, I got sun glaring in. But I have not noticed the speed performance until I go to change that family. When I'm editing the family, sure, that one change might go slow, but I'd rather have that one change go slow when I'm messing with that family rather than loading 35 families. That is overall going to slow my process down because I've got 35 families loaded. And literally, the client who just hit me up asking me about my rebar stuff for their one bin, the one family that this one will create, right? Because they had one that had a 135, they have one that's got a 90, they've got the 180. Then they have one inside of there, they got types for every single size, and there's nests inside of that. I mean, my one family is half the size of any of their single families, and they're loading in 15 of them.
You need
So,
negative angles too.
well, I can do negative angles. You just mean
Yeah,
negative angles that actually work?
but they don't go. Yeah, exactly. They go all the way around. Yeah.
They work. I can type in a negative angle, right? So now I can make hearts.
I had one back in the day that did it, but I don't know. I have to go mine
Yes,
like
but
miles.
once you start getting negative angles, then these start crisscrossing, and then it starts freaking out on the family. So,
Yeah. Rick
I
likes
love
this
rebar.
I think a rebar fabricator would hit you over the head with that bar if you started to make
So I don't. It's just one of those things when you're in there. Yes, there can be too complicated, and trust me, I am always on that line. And some people hate my casework families because they think they're just too complicated. A lot of people have the issues of like here, they're like, well, I just want to toggle on or off if there's a bend. I could have added that, but to me, it just makes sense. If the bend is 0, if the value is 0, there's no bend. I could have added an additional toggle that says bend or no bend. Then you check it, and it's going to be this. But once I do that, then somebody's going to be like, okay, cool, but now I want to checkbox for a 90-degree bend, and I want to checkbox for 135-degree bend. And it's like, just type in the damn value. And plus, with this one, the great part is if you've just got like some sort of bend slab, you can come in here and be like, oh, cool, now I can use this on a stair, or I can use this anywhere because I'm making it flexible, not fixing in an angle.
You just flip it around and put 2 of them together, but then you have to be able to turn off the end line.
Only because you're not black. Just saying.
Well, as they should not be. Because if they're not black, you can actually show how they lap.
I can show how they lap. Look, if I take this red one and I put it over this black one, I can see that the red's going over
What
the
if they're
black,
the same
kind of.
size? Okay, anyway, moving on. Let's see. Let's take the top one. So Tom asks, current company has architects and an interiors group. Right now we have 2 templates, one for any client and the second for a specific client. Is that too many? I'm curious, what is the difference between them?
Yeah, some of that is depending on what the difference is. So I'm a single, kind of the same reason I'm a single template for single family load. The problem with having multiple templates, and I have it this way, is cool. Somebody wants to change the font, or somebody wants to change this, or somebody wants to change the line weight. Now you've got to go adjust that in two separate templates. Like I had one firm, they were multidiscipline. They were AME AMEP, and S. They did all the disciplines, and we had one template for them. And if there was a change, which they did often in their office, new marketing managers like, oh, we got to change the font to look like this or this to look like that. We could change it in the template. They hated it because when they went into view templates, they saw all the MEP templates and I'm architecture. Why should I see those view templates? And this is before Dynamo. So then they broke it out into, a mechanical, electrical, a plumbing, a structural, and architectural. So they took that one template, kept doing save as's, but every time there was a change, we had to delete those other four templates, do a save as, but we weren't going to change it in five templates. It was easier to do a save as and delete stuff than it was to make the modification in five separate templates. So there's a fine line there. If, I had one client and we actually, God, I have to remember what I did with them, but they had a font for schematic design and a different font for construction documents and DD, or maybe it was presentations, then individual drawings. So we literally had all of the tags had a checkbox in each one of the tags behind the scene that said presentation or CDs. And we would check that and it would swap the fonts out. So still reading all the same labels and everything basically had something on top of each other. The only thing that they had to do is if it was text, they had to do is select all instances, right? If it was text, they'd say select all instances in the entire project, and then they would change them out to be a different font. So that was a situation like, cool, we want to do this. It was like, cool, we just swapped it out. We had literally all of the families, all the tag families that come down here to annotation symbols. They'd go into all the tag families, all the grid heads, etc., and they would toggle that little checkbox before global parameters. With global parameters, we actually could have tied that. Actually, no, we started before global parameters, and when they came out, we actually tied it to it. So they would just go up to global parameters, toggle the presentation versus construction set, and it would change all of the fonts and all of the tags. We had to manually change dimensions and text because unfortunately we couldn't link that. But at least we eliminated half of it. So they were on that. We've got two separate templates. Worst part about that was it wasn't even templates because you can't swap midstream. So, but that's how we associated that one. So again, people do weird things. I try to make it work for them, but yeah, I'm kind of like if it's small modifications, then if it were me, I would just be like, yeah, whatever those differences are, just have two tags loaded or something like that if that's what it is.
Agree. Okay. Next one. Do you know a way to add generic annotation symbols to elevation and section? Trying to add outlet symbol on plan and elevation.
Nope, not to my knowledge. With certain families, and I'm not even sure, Jason can correct me if I'm wrong here. I didn't see if there's anybody else on here, but with certain families, you can have, I don't remember, is it electrical equipment? I'm not even going to look, but there's a checkbox in the family property for like symbol location or something like that. You can set those families up, but the majority of them, annotation symbols only show in plan. And it's funny because many years ago, I was talking to Bob Bell and I showed him how I had a vertical face-based template. And he's like, oh my God, that is a life changer for the MEP world. I had no idea because he's like, we always want to show these symbols, but we want our family to be face-based. But since the face-based family, the face is like a floor, for lack of better terms, it's a solid object that's horizontal to a floor. You can only show symbols in plans. So when I showed him this, he's like, now I literally can just use your vertical face-based template, put all my symbols in there, and it's going to be an object that's usually hosted to a wall, still face-based, and now all my symbols will show up. He literally gave me a kiss on the cheek and a hug. He's like, you don't know how big this is for us to change this. I was like, cool. Had no idea. I was just hacking some things.
This might be a
So
terrible
no.
idea, but I was struggling with this on a component that I was doing, I don't know, a year or two back. And we solved it by creating a tag that had also graphics in it, but it was
Yeah.
a 3D element. I don't know if that helps at all.
Yeah, and I will say Jason's upset he isn't getting credit. Jason did show me the tool. I think this was actually before anybody even posted on the blogs. We're using um the tool for what is it? The blah, 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 blah. Shoot. It's on the collaborate tab, the copy monitor tool. It converts it there. I've also, I don't even know if Jason knew about this one. Did you guys know that you can take any hosted family and convert it to be non-hosted in 2 seconds? Find a
Did you see
family.
Michael's comment? Because it's right along the same lines as what you're saying.
Yeah, different than that, Michael. Oh no, Jason said it's a page. So I don't know if your comment on that one, Jason, was about this, but let's say you have any wall hosted, face space hosted, whatever you want, and you want to change it to not to none. Jason, I will do this in 10 seconds. If I go to doors, I know my doors are going to be wall hosted, and I say edit this door, and I go into an elevation view, and I take this wall. Oops, gotta be on the.
He says you have to do something more difficult, like a diffuser.
And then I take this and make the wall a 0 thickness. Remove constraints. Delete the wall. I've lost my opening, which is what it's telling me, and anything else on there. So not the best idea to do it on this one. But I've now created this door to a non-hosted object. You literally just have to have Revit break the host. If it's a wall, floor, ceiling, face-based object, drag the script to itself. It'll say, I can't have that grip. And now it's a non-hosted object. So literally takes me 2 seconds. I would show you, I don't have hosted objects, but doors and windows. Most of my stuff is not hosted. Sure, let's just go open an out of the box one. So open, we'll go to out of the box. All right, what would be a face-based option? There's going to probably be something under mechanical. We'll go to MEP. Oh, why am I going to mechanical? Let's go up to, come on, somebody, a little lighting. Libraries. We'll go to English Imperial. We'll go to, I guess I clicked up way too far. We'll go to light fixtures. Lighting.
Sarah says wall lab.
MEP. Well, I'm in MEP now. We're going to go
Too late.
to internal. Too late.
Gone too far.
I got to find something that's space-based. Here we go. This is space-based.
No emergency wall light.
You want to convert this to be non-hosted. Continue. Take this. Pull the grip back onto itself. Close enough. Yeah, remove constraints. Delete it. Non-hosted.
How did you discover this? Do you just like go around trying to break things? And I know, I wonder what happens if I make this 0 thickness. Like that doesn't even make any sense.
Well, I was out there thinking, it's like, well, if I take this object and it deletes it, I might lose any constraints. If I had constraints going off of the face of that object as opposed to the reference level, then yes, you might lose a constraint. But if you make sure, I'll undo that. If you make sure that there's no, references, there's no properties, elevation, front, let's see, is there any like dimension going from the level up? Let's look at the right side. Right, so no, we go shit on this one. So there's no parameters on this one, at least not in family. So as long as there's not like a dimension, right, you're making sure that somebody, if this was parametric, oh, here we go. So if this was parametric, you need to make sure that this dimension goes to the reference plane, not to the face. And again, you can do that by saying, hey, show related. I missed it. Try that again. Why are you not giving me show related?
Philip says this is a secret he's going to know and not share.
Cool. Well, it's not giving me the show related on this. I don't know why, but as long as I make sure this grip is going to the level or the reference plane or the level, not the extrusion, then when I break that extrusion, remove constraints, delete element, my dimension stays, all those parameters I had, I'm good. That's it. You've now got a non-hosted family.
All right. Jason wants to ask a question for a friend.
Well, there you go, Jason. All of your converted families can be converted to non-hosted in minutes. You just have to do something that breaks the host.
All right, next one. So an architectural buddy who is not here today wants to know how to model coping on a sloped wall. Also, why does it have to an in-place? Your English is broken, Jason. I don't know what that says. Why does it have to be an in-place component? In place?
Yeah, that's it. In-place component. So I'm assuming what he's talking about is go back. Yeah, we're in here. Let's go back to an actual view, floor plan, level 1. We're just going to create similar off of this, and we'll say, hey, I wanted to go off here like this, and then over here like this, but I really wanted this one to be 4 feet tall, right? Whatever. Then I'm gonna go to my 3ds. So unfortunately, the only way to do something like this is if you wanted to, I think theoretically is gonna make that slanted, but you'll get the point here. You wanted to come through here and do something like this. The only way to do something like this, or maybe this wall edit profile, we'll just go like this and take it down to close enough. We'll hope that does its job. It's probably not going to, but this is going to break, but you'll get the point. So when I was coming in here to do this, then yeah, unfortunately, the only way to do this is to literally go to model in place. And this is the times that these are completely acceptable. I know a lot of people freak out about modeling in place. This is one of those things where it's going to be acceptable. I'll go make this a wall. I'll say, okay, sure, I don't care. And then I'm going to go do a sweep. I'm going to say pick path. I'm like, oh, you should be going from here to here to here. And I'm going to trim that path up. No, I'm not, because those are not concentric, but you would get the point. So we're really going to break this. Oops. Pick edge. Yeah, this is so probably not going to work. And then I'll trim these ones up.
I was
We'll
thinking
say,
slanted wall, not sloped top.
so we'll say this. That's why you're an engineer. And we'll say edit profile, and we'll draw a circle, and we'll say cool. I'm going to make this very, very tiny so it actually works with those crappy vertical sections I have. And there you go. I've now got my skateboard rail on top of this wall.
Oh, like a chamfer.
Well, I did an actual circle, but sure.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the only way to do that. And that's basically all you can do, and it is an in-place family. The thing that I do crack up is like somebody will come back later and be like, oh, cool, now we're going to add another wall over here, and they add a wall going back, so they do a new in-place family. So I always try to tell people that if you see something like that, you need to go edit in place, then go say, cool, let me grab this and edit that sweep, and then pick the new path. Don't do it as a new object, just keep adding to.
Couldn't you
Oh,
do
wait, let's
some
go.
fancy like adaptive component, Mr. Adaptive Component Man?
You could, but you're not going to know how many points that adaptive component is going to have. So you're going to have to create one that's 6 and one that's 12 and one that's 210 because you'd have to
Could
be
it string
picked.
together a bunch of two?
You could string together a whole bunch, but they're not going to miter in the corners and do what you need, and then they're all going to be individual objects.
Sorry, you
So
lost me
yes,
at miter.
so yes, you could, but so there you go. So yeah, unfortunately, that is the best route. What you're going to do if it's something that's not completely horizontal or vertical, it's going to be an in-place family.
Okay.
And Jason says it's not his English, it's Jacob's.
Yeah, way to throw your coworker under the bus, dude.
Oh, Michael says that PyRevit has a way to delete those things out of there too. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't need PyRevit when I can just edit the family and break it. But you've got to copy because it behind the scenes, PyRevit is converting it using the copy monitor tool behind the scenes.
You just like breaking things.
Yep.
All right. Have you used nested details for 3D details? Would love to get rid of the Revit to AutoCAD to Revit fake 3D details.
When you say 3D, are you talking isometric details or are you actually talking true 3D details? Because most people say it's a 3D detail, but it's isometric 2D lines, especially if you're saying coming from AutoCAD. If it's a true 3D detail, then yes, you can go model those objects. The one thing you're going to have to think about if you're modeling an actual object, and I have done this for clients, like modeled every single layer on this wall. I came into this wall, modeled every layer, including the building wrap, flashing, etc., and then pulled them all back. Because yeah, you absolutely can go through and start doing that. But it's a little bit of a pain, and you've got to make sure it's like part of the part, not part of the building, because it's going to be a detail you put somewhere. So if it's actually modeled, then it's
just usually actually modeled.
Yeah, so you just need to go through and model all of the components. One thing to do think about though is like if I take this wall, I can convert this wall to parts. So um, once I convert this wall to parts, I can now take any one of those parts that are there. If I check a part, I can come in here and say, cool, I want to get my shape handles on that part. So now this will allow me to start pulling back the different layers of this wall once I say it to kind of get into some of those 3D things. So I don't have to model each wall section independently. I can possibly just convert that to parts and start saying, cool, here's my brick wall with my fun cap on top. I can start pulling those apart. The other tool to always think about in Revit as well is you always have the displacement sets too. So we can do displace element. So even though I pulled that part back, I can now do a displacement, start pulling these pieces off to the side to really say, okay, now let's take that 3D model thing and start pulling it apart slightly to get into where I needed it to be. No, displacement set right there. Right, so I can pull all those off. I can even on this displacement set say, hey, go give me a path from this corner to its original location, from this corner to its original location, etc., and it'll start pulling where it needs to go. So those types of options are there, but yeah, you literally have to go in and model every single one of those pieces. I've done it. I have some clients who put those on all their projects, like they've done the window flashing detail and they've got all the window flashing pieces in there, and it can be done. It's just spending the time. And then similar to what I do in my personal template, if I come in here and look at my template, and I go to, I'm just going to go to my overall 3D view for a second here. You're going to see in my 3D view, I have all of this stuff here that I didn't see in the other views. So I don't do legend components. I truly model the objects where the legend component would be. I just, in Revit, have a phase called my legend phase, and all of this stuff has been created in the legend phase. So I've got everything here modeled. It's all in my legend phase. And that legend phase for me is the last phase in the project. So it doesn't show up as an existing element. It doesn't show up as previous. Some people will take it all, put it on a work set. My template is not, it's an actual template, not a Revit project. So this is all just done on a legend phase. And so you'd have to do the same thing for that 3D detail. You'd have to put on a detail phase, or work set or whatever you want to do. So you make sure that it's kind of off in the distance or, outside of the scope of work so people just don't even see it.
Well, I think what he's getting at though is could you have it in like a container file and do the link to details method?
Well, in 3D, you can't say by linked view. So, or can you? I got to think about that. Do I
Because
have
you
linked?
can. I feel like you can because there's
Oh yeah, as long as the 3D view is locked, I think you can. I think there's
the
something like that.
results is not great apparently.
Yeah, I've not tried to play with that. I might go in and try to play one day and say, hey, look, here's a standard 3D detail. I mean, it might even be really nice with like some steel connections. Hey, here's a steel connection that's 3D and we can put it in there. And even with that displacement set, it's really cool. I just don't think enough people use the displacement set.
It's an opportunity to update your detail classes.
Ironically, in Revit 23 for structure, they actually added rebar to be part of the displacement set. So you need to show your overlapping rebar or your rebar that's close to each other. You can now start pulling it apart in a displacement set. It's either 23 or 22. I don't remember.
Michael has a follow-up. Why last rather than first for legend phase? They have one they use.
Because of its first, and I want to say show previous, it's going to be one of the first things. You could also demo it on that same phase, so everything would be gone. But if you say show previous and new, and you have demo on, and you're in phase one, you would see it. I always do it at the end because most people, if they're like, hey, I am in a new construction phase, and I say show previous and new, it's gone. Right? I don't have to think about demoing it. I don't have to think about any of that. I just always do it as the last phase. I know I've had some clients put the stuff all in a design option and they have two options, one that's empty and one that's the design option.
Michael says they do a demo in the Ano phase.
No, so just everybody does it different.
Yep. All right, so this is a long one. All right, so Joseph asks, was recently working on a commercial wood project and the client wanted all wood trusses modeled. Due to that, it made the project pretty heavy and took roughly 30 minutes just to print. Is there a way to lighten that up? Would doing what you were showing earlier lighten the family up that much if there were thousands of those wood trusses modeled? And then he has a follow-up that says, the job had roughly 3,500 modeled trusses, making it over 52,000 modeled members.
So two things on that. One, if you're in a previous version of Revit, make sure none of the analytical crap is turned on. So what I mean is in structure, if you were previously to go model a beam, no, I don't have beams in here, but if you were to go model a beam, it automatically generated analytical links for that. So if you're in Revit 22, I think they changed it in 23. If you're in Revit 22 or older, then you needed to make sure, like it drove me crazy that if I'd go model a beam, it automatically created the analytical link. So I had a little Dynamo script say, hey, grab all walls, turn off analytical, grab all beams, turn off analytical, grab all columns. Or in my template, the very first time I drew a beam, I unchecked enable analytical. I drew my beam, I deleted it. Now that's the default for my beams being drawn. With that said, that does not help with trusses because trusses place those beams for you and they automatically give you the analytical. So you did have to go grab all your cords and webs and uncheck the analytical. So if you are in an old version, do that first. Do that on every damn project because it's amazing. You know, my structural engineer's like, Revit's so slow. We turn it off like, oh my God, night and day, especially like on a floor. Because you move a wall, then it's trying to adjust the analytical as well as the floor, and everything's trying to change, or you move a huge improvement. So when they changed that in 23, I was like, oh, thank God they got rid of that and they're forcing me to put it in manually because nobody's using it. I'd rather do it manually. So that's the first thing to say on that. The other thing I would possibly say on that is twofold. One, I would put all of that stuff on a work set. And I know I'm not a big fan of work sets, but the reason why I say this is why when I am going to open up a project, whenever I go into a work shared set project, this one should do it. I have specify work sets turned on. When I do that specify work sets, what I do is then I come in, I'm trying to find a smaller file that I don't think will take forever to open. I don't think I did it in that project. Yeah, I don't have one. But so it comes up with specify work sets. If you close that work set upon opening, it is not going to think about those elements and you will be going faster on a day-to-day basis. That does not help you for printing, but at least it helps you for your day-to-day basis when you start going through there. Or the other option is put that in its own linked model. Right? If it's in a linked model, Revit doesn't have to think about the things joining. So I might have put, I'm assuming you use trusses so you could attach them to a roof or a slab or a reference plane. I would put the roof and that truss all in a linked model. Therefore, I can just not have it loaded when I'm in there working.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that.
But I mean, yeah, if you model, 5,200 structural elements, yeah, you're going to start having some issues there.
52,000, I think it said.
Yeah, I couldn't remember.
Okay. What's a zero? Okay. All right, let's see. Can you specify work sets to open when opening from the home page? Follow up.
No. So if you go to Autodesk, well, yes, absolutely. Sorry, I can't say no. So when you go create your very first, I'm go away. Sure, I'll go into this file. When you go to add work sharing to your project for the very first time, most people don't do this. I always set this up. So every single project, every time you open it, it gives you specify work sets. Most of my clients hate this because they want to hit open, go get their cup of coffee, come back, and have it open. They hit open, they go get their cup of coffee, come back, and the work sets dialog box is sitting there waiting for user input. So most of my clients hate this. But when you enable work sets or work sharing for the very first time, sure, cool. It's going to come up, give you your work sets, whatever it's going to be, cool. But when you save it that very first time, so I don't ever go to collaborate and hit the collaborate button first, because if you do it, you don't get this option. So for me, I enable work sets. And the reason why I do it is I can now come here and do my save. Sorry. I'm going to do a file save. Yeah, no, I think I just hit save. Sorry, it's been like 3 weeks since I've done this. I forget. I might have to do file save as. Can't remember. Yeah, it's a file save as. So what I should have done is file save as. And still done this as my project. It would understand it's going to be a central file. It would give it to me. But in the options right here, when you're doing a save as, and I really broke it because now I meant to do a save as and change the name. You've got this option up here for specify work sets. So you can tell it, I got to detach from central. Instead of last views, change it to specify. So now I can specify, and it will force every time a person comes in, it will force them to specify the work set. So we'll pop it up, open when it comes in. That's what I do on every single one of my files. I got to go in there and delete that. That's what I do in every single one of my projects when I go in and set that up is I set the specify. And like I said, it upsets often a lot of my clients because like, oh, this is stupid. I hate it. Why does Revit do that? I just want to be able to open and walk away. And it's like, cool. But I do this for you so it can actually, make your life a little bit easier when you start getting into there and have, gotta find the one I just created. Oh, I did that in 23. Sorry, I'm just trying to fix this before I have it broken. But it will give you that specify every single time you open it. Like I said, if you walk away from that, you're going to lose it. But just make sure that you do have it on there. And I always do that because when I open up files, I laugh. I do things like vertical circulation, not because I need that on a work set, because I can close the stairs, I can close the elevators, all those hundreds of balusters, all the hundreds of treads, and Revit will be much, much faster when I try to go through and set that up. I also, if there's a project that's got it's like majority curtain wall, I create an exterior skin and all that goes on there because I don't need to open up thousands of millions and thousands of glass. 80% of the time, I'm not looking at that stuff. And when I do need to see it, I can just reopen the work set and it'll come back. Again, none of that helps you for printing. You're still screwed. That's printing. Sorry.
So
But
another
it'll help you on a day-to-day basis.
follow up to the same kind of conversation you've been having is Simon says the newer Revit family templates have analytic link to every template. Is there any way to get rid of that? Because when I open Revit, Revit family built in 2012, it doesn't have that and the file size is smaller.
Sorry, say that one again. Oh, there it is. I found it. Oh, wait, no, you deleted it. Now I can't read it. Dang it.
I cleared it, but the it's unanswered. I'll read it again.
Yeah. The new Revit family template has an analytical link to every template.
Yeah. I think when you were talking about the turning off the analytical lines before.
I don't see that, so I don't know what Simon's talking about. So if I go open, I'm in 23. Does it need to be 24, Simon, or can it be in 23? Imperial Library, structural framing, steel, W shape. I mean, there's nothing in here that talks about this being analytical. So it's where I'm kind of confused on that one.
Open any family and an analytical link is always there.
So I'm in a family. I don't know where you mean analytical link.
Open families from the browser.
No, I don't ever open families from a browser. That bloats your families.
There you go. There's the answer. Don't open from the.
I never ever do. Close this.
You just did like 30 minutes ago.
Well, yes, because I'm in a demo, but if I'm actually editing a family, I never. There's actually add-in utilities that don't work for me because you've never hit edit from edit family from a project. There's a bug in the Revit API that certain tools don't work, and none of those add-in programs work for me because I've never once hit edit from family. What am I on? 23. Let's go to 24 because I have a beam in here in 24. Structural framing. Edit. Okay, I'm not seeing anything analytical in here.
Project browser and the family expand, but so maybe you expand again and get to the types. I'm confused. No.
There's no.
Simon, you're gonna have to call Brian later and show him what you mean.
Well, we can allow Simon to talk.
In the family editor, go down to the browser.
Okay. Edit. Oh, yes. No, I know what you're freaking talking about. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know how the hell to get rid of this. Pisses me off. Sorry, I'm there now. Yeah, this. You can't delete because it says you can't delete the last family. Yeah, every damn family has this. It's not even structural. You get analytical links in every single freaking family. Sorry, I'm with you, Simon. Yes, I don't know what that is, and I keep meaning to ask Autodesk, like, what the hell is this? I don't need an analytical link on my sink. I don't need an analytical link on my freaking cabinet. I think this was one of those things that when they added the new analysis tool, there was no way for them to get rid of it. But yeah, you are correct. This does make the families larger simply because of this stupid thing here.
Okay. You have 5 questions in 6 minutes. Can you do it?
Depends what the questions are.
Is there a way to display family parameters when loaded in a project in different unit format from the default project units? I can change units in the family itself, but it reverts in the project.
No. Sometimes if I do know I need to be like looking at a family, like, oh, I'm going to edit this family type and I need to put the values in decimals or whatever. First off, you can do that. If you're like, man, the depth of this needed to be 11.1, 11.6789, you can put that in and Revit will do that conversion for you.
You could do
Second
different
off,
units right there too, like if it was millimeters or something, you can put
yep,
it in.
and if it's millimeters, or I literally in my project, if I need to edit that in the family, I will come change my units temporarily. I'll come in here and change my units. I'll go change them to be like, feet, whatever, because I needed decimal feet. I needed to see 3 decimal places. I'll say, okay, okay. And now when I go edit the family, I'm getting what I wanted to see here. Oh, cool, change it. Then I go back and change my units. But no, you can't see one thing independent of another, with one exception. You can, and this is, so I don't know what you're trying to do, but if I have a dimension style like here, I can go create one. So this working one is in decimal feet, and I can have one that's in inches. And if I select the element, it's going to draw something over here saying it's going to break all that. So if I come in here, do a dimension from here to here, and I grab this one, right? This one is in feet. But if I change it to be one I should have in inches, then it's going to display inches. And if I now grab that, it knows that inches is going to be my inch mark. But if I put that back to my standard and I change that to be, 122, I'm going to get 122 feet. So with the exception of if your dimensions are there, it will understand that's the input you're giving it. If you're trying to look at a property of something, no, you're screwed.
Okay. All right, next one. I've upgraded one of my projects to Revit 24 and I can't see walls cut. I can't see the wall cut patterns when they have transparency. Have you had the same issue?
I've actually had that prior to Revit 24. I just can't remember. Alejandra's seen that project because she just raised her hand. So I'm assuming she's seen it. Or she just clicked the raise her hand button.
Let Alejandra talk. Do you have a solution, Alejandra?
I
Yeah.
haven't seen that. Ironically, you said that, and I saw that question earlier when I was browsing. And the funny part is, in this particular project, I have got to go look at it. I have no wall hatch patterns on the surface. So my surface hatch patterns here went away, and my color went away too. If I go back to consistent colors, it's all gray. But if I edit this family, there's freaking brick on it. So I've got to go figure out, oh, nope, I lied. The brick went away. There used to be brick on this, but now it's went away. So I've got to go figure out what the heck's going on there too.
Oh, okay.
What is the YouTube click you sent out there?
Joseph was asking for link details, and I was just looking up. I was Googling you.
Got it.
There's so many. Just Google Brian and linked details. And actually, the BIM After Dark is already up. When I Googled you, it was there.
Yep.
There's one. There's a ton of AU ones. There's probably built and RTC ones. There's a gazillion. Recently tried to delete a curtain wall panel and it didn't go away. Any advice to how to solve it?
Yeah, you can't delete curtain wall panels.
And
So
what
if you have to replace it with an empty panel. So if I go back here and I
You could use some help getting fired up. And
good Lord.
You unmuted Alejandra, or you made Alejandra able to talk and she didn't know.
I said it.
So if I come down here to curtain walls, sure, here we go, boom, boom. You can't delete a curtain panel. What you have to do is replace it with an empty one. So you have to grab the system panel called empty and replace it with the empty panel. I personally have my curtain wall empty panel. I also have like some crazy ass offset. I don't remember how I did that, but so I can easily see, oh, there's my empty panel. So yeah, can't delete it. Have to replace it with an empty panel.
Okay. Do you have an easy way to deal with creating a wall with log rounds as wood sided? Tried voiding the height and I need, but it breaks with the doors. So winding up modeling 2 walls using wall openings where I want the door.
You can do it with sweeps built into the wall. Oh, and here Brian goes trying to find where this is. I actually think I know. This needs to go to the client. USDA Forest Service. Cool, I do have one in 2013. Yes, it's even been upgraded to 2013. Look at that. Yeah, I got asked this question. Ironically, this project was originally created in 2005. The Forest Service had bought all these kit homes and they didn't take into consideration any of the snow loads in the areas they were putting these little kit homes in. So all the walls were starting to push out from the snow load because they had too slow of a pitch. And also all the logs themselves were just rotting away because they buried them into the ground. So yeah, brilliant idea to do in a snowy area. But what you can see here is I do have this set up. I do have sweeps coming inside of here. Again, if you wanted this on one side, your sweep could be halfway. What you have to do when you're looking at the type of that wall is come in and in that sweep, when you're looking at those sweeps, previews. Yes, I know. There's sweeps that go way too tall, and this was a horrible project to pull up. I have a better version, but I knew where this one was. So I've got these sweeps inside of here, and when you do a sweep, the checkbox here that comes up as cuttable. If this is not checked, I will just go, well, those are at the top and go to the bottom and then check view. If those are unchecked, when you do this, it will not go through. Yes, I know. Okay, hopefully I unchecked a couple where it'll go through. It's not, oh, well, those ones are these ones because you can see I now have a grip on them. So still cut it, but you can have these start coming in and you have to check that cuttable for it to be there. If you don't check it, then you're manually forced to pull each one of these back, which can be a good thing because then you can pull them back to where you want that opening to be if you want. There's also inside of there, that was not what I wanted. Grab the wall again. Not only do you have in that sweeps, you have the capability to come in and say the setback. And what the setback means is if I am being cuttable, I want to set this back. Again, I'm going to go down here and grab some of these bottom ones, 6 inches. So I'm going to do a 6-inch setback. Or whatever you need that to be. If I do this, Control C, Control V, Control V, Control V, Control V, whatever. Say okay, I'm going to say okay, I'm going to say okay. Now the ones I did that for, you can see come back 6 inches automatically. So you can build that in thinking, oh, hey, I've got to do this. I know I'm going to have 4-inch trim on this, put a 4-inch setback at any of those cuts. The other reason that's kind of fun about this too is you'll get a grip at the end. That's why I did these as full logs. So if I really wanted to kind of come out and show, hey, look, you can do the, each one of these logs is running longer type scenario. You can do that. Or you can also just create a wall opening and cut the wall at the slant, make the walls extra long, cut the wall at the slant and get it to do that as well. The
And then
difference
combine that with your 52,000 trusses and try to print.
the difference is what you'll see is I do have a wall, and this wall is called full log. So the base starts with a full log. And then I have another wall where the first profile is a half log. So I have a full log and a half log. So I can actually even show those kind of intermingling at the middle.
Okay, last one. What are the problems with using desktop connector to share Revit files to BIM 360 projects?
If you're using desktop connector, then the desktop connector is not making a collaborate in cloud. So you can't actually open it with Revit from the cloud and you won't be able to link and you'll have a lot of issues. So if you're truly trying to make a collaborated file, then yes, you need to go up to your collaborate tab and say collaborate in cloud. If you just want it as a one-time file up there, then what you need to do is go say file save as Revit project, Revit cloud project. So there's a save as cloud model. This is a single user file, not a work shared model file, which allow you to go say open and do it, but you need to do it this way. If you're simply doing it for people to download and view, drag and drop it up there, does not matter. But just people will be aware. And it's actually funny in Revit, if you go to the open like through Autodesk Docs, you won't even see it. If it's a single user or a drag and drop file, you won't see it under Autodesk Docs. You will only see it if you go to open.
Okay.
So there are 3 variations of doing that. The collaborated work shared model, a single user cloud model, and a drag and drop file.
I think that was what the person was getting at.
You can link to a DC file though. DC?
Desktop connector?
Oh, yes, you can link to those. I don't know. I just think everybody does all these workarounds and they spend hours upon hours because they don't want to pay the $900 a user to get this. And it's like, man, you spend so much time doing all these workarounds, just pay the damn $900. But that's my opinion. And then if you are looking at that as well, when you are talking permissions, oh, let me pull this down. If you are talking I didn't want to do that. No, go full screen. Come back. When you are looking inside of here, it's all about the permissions. And personally, for me, when I do permissions, in case we ran out of time, I had something else to put on there. But when I start looking at this, I do all of my permissions 100% based off of roles. So if I come into, sure, this one should have it. I have a BIM 360 template. My BIM 360 template is automatically set up with all of these folders. It's got the project files. You've got to rename. You've got to rename the project. You've got to come in here and then rename this. But that's not even. Here we go. So you've got to rename the project, and I've got all these folders inside of here. And inside of all those folders, I already have pre-built permissions set up. So I have fire safety engineers have full control over their own folder. And then when you expand down to it, we have a Revit folder and linked folder and whatever. And the Revit folder, everybody has view permissions to this. So therefore, you can link in that stuff, but you don't have permissions to go through it. And again, this is all built in a template. So I literally go create a project. I've just got to rename the project. I've got to assign people to the project, and it's done. If I'm feeling, good, I might come in here and start adding the actual company. Like, oh, the structural engineer in this project is this company. I might add their actual company name to this project. See if I did it on that
The
architect.
whole side conversation going on permissions.
Yeah, I kind of saw it. So here I added the actual company, and then you'll see as you add these things with permissions, these are the people that have been added to structural engineer. These are the people underneath this particular client, etc., as they go through.
Rick wants to know if you've been playing with Bridge. He was literally just ranting about Bridge yesterday.
Well, it's because I had one structural engineer who decided they don't want to be on the hub. They want to be on their own hub. They don't want to have to rely on the architect to add users, etc., and they just want to use Bridge. So
You're 7 minutes over.
I'm always over.
And I'm 7 minutes late to my meeting.
Well, you can leave. So that's the thing with this. I don't know. I use desktop connector, or excuse me, I use BIM 360/ACC. I use it on almost every project, even on my own little residential houses up there. It gives me the cloud backups. The other thing that's really, really cool is if you come in here, anybody can come into this viewer and view it online like this, depending on what you've got published. I also noticed in BIM 360, but I haven't checked it in Docs yet, just yesterday, that if I grab an object, and now in BIM 360 tells me, hey, here's all the views this shows up in that you've published. So you've got 3 views published, but this only shows up in these 2 views. So I have used Bridge as Rick comes up, but I'm using it with the contractor. The reason I'm not a big fan of Bridge is I do live linking inside of here. So when I'm inside of here, everybody links to the folder. There's no publishing, there's no consuming, there's no linking from somebody, somebody's consumed folder, none of that crap. For me, everything is live linking to the stuff. So if I'm using Bridge, I'm now waiting on the other person to publish to get that to come across. So they've got to go through and publish. Then yes, I will see it once they publish, but now I'm relying on them to publish. And 90% of the projects I go into, we have a policy you should publish at least once a week, if not every day. And I'll go into the consultant's model and they published literally 3 weeks ago. And it's kind of like, yeah, no, don't like that. So I just do live linking in the whole thing. Now I don't have to rely on people to do things because people don't. And that's how I do it. So it would be similar to Bridge if you were linking from a shared folder.
Well, I think from at least my past as a consulting structural engineer, it's incredibly uncomfortable that your client owns your IP and they can lock you out at any time. So I wonder if that's what's going on.
But nobody spends the time to go lock that crap out. And
that's true. I still have access to projects I was, from 5 years ago.
Yeah, nobody goes through and worries about that and catches up on all that stuff. It's just kind of like, yeah. But I don't know. That's me. And I know MEP is always like, but I don't want to make architects make changes, and then we don't see those changes. Like, yeah, but now you're working on an outdated file. And like I say, is if it's I've got to publish, I publish this week, and then you go see that published model this week, and now I start working again. You're a week old, and when I see your model a week later when you publish it, stuff you've updated is now 2 weeks old. I just don't get that. You might as well go to a goddamn FTP site and do the download and replace on your server, because Literally, it takes just as much effort. If it's live, I'm saving hours upon hours a week, not publishing, not consuming, not hounding people to go damn publish and create packages, all that crap.
I was just clarifying. It's not, I believe in the high trust, like you have my stuff, I don't care, steal whatever you want of the model. It's just the way it is. But no, it's about, you could remove me from the project, Michael, and then I can't access my file anymore.
Thomas, allowing cross-linking between projects is what Bridge does.
Yeah.
So Bridge allows you to link from my hub to your hub. And when I publish, you meant live linking. Got it. Yeah, I think that's a pretty hefty ask. But so yes, I have been using the Bridge, but it's only been with contractors, and literally we publish, contractors don't have to go download the latest published model. And I laugh because the contractor, actually similar to Jason, came back like, you guys publish every day, we don't want that many updates. It's like, well, that's our policy, get over it. I know a lot of people use Clarity to do it. I now use the new ID Automate tool to publish, and I can say, hey, do it whenever. And so I literally publish every day because I don't get why you want it. It's an excessive amount of backups in case something goes wrong. You can see what's changed. You can run the model compare to see what's going on as things happen. It's just, yeah, I publish every single day, and it's so much nicer.
It's so funny because lots of people were asking for that not live linking features to come out. And then now that they've been out, and I think there's mixed emotions about them over the years. And now everybody's like, well, we want more live options.
I think part of it was people didn't like everybody having permission to the same folder. Because originally everything was in one folder and everybody could open up everything, and that was the big problem. Once they switched to, oh, now there's folders with rights, but we can still link from those folders live, I think that was the best solution. Alrighty, and like usual, I went 10 minutes over. So, hey, it was only 10 minutes last week. It was like 30, or last month. So I appreciate everybody for coming. Desiree and myself, we will be at AU. I know that I'll be hanging out in the exhibit hall quite a bit. I got sponsored by ID8 to go there, so I'm going to go to the sessions I want to go to. Otherwise, I'll probably be hanging out at the ID8 booth. So if you guys want to stop by and say hey, or put hashtag Revit Radio in any of your tweets, and then maybe we can hook up that way too. I know Brian with Civil Chat's doing the same thing on his Civil Chat. So thank you everyone for being here. Again, look for me. I'll probably be in one of the bright colored shirts at AU, or I might even just take t-shirts since I'm not presenting, and only wear my Revit Radio t-shirts. We'll see. So look for me in the bright colored shirts, or just look for me over at the ID8 booth probably. Talk to everyone later, and thanks for joining.